Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Large rallies took place in many Alberta cities over the weekend, protesting the province's new youth health policies. London police offered an update on sexual assault charges laid against a number of NHL players. And it was a cold and soggy one as the polar plunge in support of Special Olympics took place in Lethbridge over the weekend.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. 5 players from Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team are officially facing sexual assault charges in London, Ontario. 4 of them are now NHL players. They include Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers, and Cal Foote and Michael McLeod with the New Jersey organization. The 5th is former NHL player Alex Formenton, who is now with the team in Europe. Police say this investigation has been a lengthy process.
I want to recognize and acknowledge the victim for her courage and her incredible strength throughout. I know there are questions regarding the initial investigation and the findings of the 2022 review. It is important to understand that as the Chief of Police, while I am committed to transparency and accountability, I must also ensure that I do not compromise the ongoing legal process. There is a place and there is a time for me to provide those answers, and that time is not now. Therefore, I cannot discuss details that are now part of the case before the courts.
Calgary Flames and Leafs legend Lanny McDonald suffered a heart attack. The incident occurred Sunday at the Calgary International Airport. The 70-year-old Stanley Cup champion said he suffered the medical emergency after returning from the NHL All-Star game in Toronto. He says the 2 nurses who were passing by to catch their flights immediately jumped into action to help save his life. McDonald says he was eternally grateful for their care and action and owes them his life. McDonald also thanked EMS and WestJet staff for their role in helping him. McDonald continues to recover at a hospital in Calgary. A protest was held on Saturday in response to the Alberta government's new youth policies. As BCN's Alex McLeod reports now, the anger was being felt across the province.
Act up! Fight back! Trans lives are under attack!
Protesters across Alberta took to the streets on Saturday. Many came out to raise their voices over the new youth health policies in schools. They cover a range of topics from gender identity, surgeries, and transgender athletes. Shannon Phillips, NDP MLA for Lethbridge West, acknowledges some parents may be concerned about what is being taught, but she says that's not the case here.
Parents always want to know what's going on in the schools. That's why we have the education system structured the way we do. That's why we have processes in place for that, so that schools can be safe and inclusive and parents can have their very legitimate questions answered. What we've seen more recently is campaigns of disinformation, of making problems up that don't really exist. Instead of actually funding classrooms and funding our education system, the UCP has decided to distract from their government's record with some of these policies that are very, very harmful to trans youth.
Even on a wet and rainy Saturday, people are still filling the streets in front of Lethbridge City Hall to protest the Alberta government's new policy for schools. The event saw trans youth, parents, school teachers, and even a priest come up and share their thoughts and feelings to the crowd. A petition was also being signed to present to the Alberta legislature. LES, a volunteer at the event, says she wants the government to focus its attention on other issues.
I'm hoping that it will kind of bring light to the Conservative Party. I'm just hoping that they'll rethink what they're doing and see that children will die, and that's kind of a straight fact that we're putting children's lives at risk, and that's not okay, and we're just going to keep fighting. We'd like them to just drop it, really. They shouldn't continue to bring out bills. Focus on our drought crisis, focus on our housing crisis, focus on other things, don't attack children.
Protests also took place in Calgary and Edmonton as well on Saturday. Organizers of the Lethbridge rally say a school walkout is being planned for this Wednesday at 10 a.m. in support of trans youth. For Bridge City News, I'm Alex McLeod.
Now, as Alex mentioned, a rally was also held in Edmonton over the weekend. Many of the attendees are warning the plans will out trans kids and potentially put their lives at risk.
I live in Red Deer, and I decided to come out today because I have a bunch of friends who this affects, and it affects me personally. As I came out as trans when I was 14, it upset me greatly. It caused me and my friends a lot of stress knowing that they will be forcefully outed to their parents if they aren't, and knowing that this could put us in more danger than it is worth. And so I'm here to support my friends who can't too, and everyone who doesn't have a voice. I'm here to be that voice for them.
Well, I am a non-binary and transgender adult, and I remember the past in this province, and I remember homophobic policies of the past. I remember the silence around trans identity and queer identity. And I am here, hopefully, to fight so other children don't have to go through the same.
Premier Danielle Smith defended her new proposed transgender youth policies during a visit to Ottawa. Federal Liberals, including Employment Minister Brandy Boissonneau, are accusing her of pushing an anti-LGBTQ2+ agenda.
I've had many conversations with members of the trans community, and it's not a single voice, and it's not a single perspective. I think there's another woman that I consulted with who transitioned as an adult, and when I was talking it through with her about whether she would have liked to have transitioned earlier, she said, "Well, then I wouldn't have my kids, and I love my kids." So these are the kind of things that that weigh on my mind. Is I want to make sure that young people are not closing off options to themselves prematurely. I want to make sure that processes are followed so that it's a well-considered decision and that the child is mature enough to understand the consequences of the decisions that they're making. And so I will keep on consulting with the transgender community, because it's really important that we give those who do make the transition the support they need in their family environment and with their medical needs on a lifetime basis.
Now, the reason why Premier Smith made her way to Ottawa was to open a new provincial office. Smith says the new space is meant to expand the province's presence in our nation's capital and to help amplify our province's voice on the national stage. Alberta and Ottawa often butt heads over issues such as energy, pensions, and the environment. Alberta previously had an office in Ottawa, but was shut down back in 2015 amid a budget shortfall under former Premier Jim Prentice. Three-term Calgary MLA Kathleen Ganley has officially put her name forward to become the new leader of Alberta's New Democrats. The former Justice Minister said her campaign would focus on delivering a message tied to the NDP's economic strategy.
I think that regardless of a university education, average families here in Alberta should have access to the basics. They should have food, shelter, education. They should have things like hockey or soccer practice. They should have access to the occasional vacation. But for many, that dream is getting farther and farther away. I know who I am. I know why I'm here, and I know that my colleagues stand with me. So the UCP can call me whatever they want. I won't be fooled, and neither will Albertans.
Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips has thrown her support behind Ganley as the party's new leader. Current leader Rachel Notley announced last month that she would step down as soon as members chose her replacement. The leadership contest is already underway as candidates who want to run, they must register before March the 15th. The new leader will be chosen on June the 22nd. You know, with the wind chill earlier today, it felt like minus 20 degrees. We also had some blowing snow. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, fortunately, things will be warming up a bit.
Yeah, it should be warming up quite a bit there, Hal, but staying relatively seasonal all week. And now seasonal right now is anything from 0 to minus 12. And as we look into the days ahead, we're seeing a lot of minus 2s, minus 3s, minus 4s. At this evening, we are looking at a slight chance of flurries. Minus 8 is the overnight low. And then as we get into Tuesday, we're seeing a high of 0 with mainly cloudy skies there. So pretty average for this time of year. I'll be back later on in the show to give you that full national forecast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Well, the Lethbridge Polar Plunge took place this past weekend. The event had residents jumping in some chilly water for a great cause. Matt Burton, the provincial director for the Alberta Law Enforcement Torch Run, says the long-running event has raised some big bucks in the past.
It started in 1981 in Wichita, Kansas, when 6 members of the Wichita Police Service carried the torch from City Hall to the high school, all in an effort to raise funds for the local games. They raised $300 that year. 43 years later, we have now globally raised over $1 billion, all for Special Olympics worldwide.
On behalf of Special Olympics Lethbridge, thank you. Much appreciated.
Yes, the event raises some money for Special Olympics Alberta to help fund the athletes' travel costs. Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan says it's a special feeling to be involved.
Well, it's great. I think my brain is a little still half frozen here, but no, what a great event for sure. And you know, being able to be out here and with all the folks and the great support, and you know, we're kind of competitive city, and to think that we've almost surpassed a Calgary in fundraising, that's pretty exciting.
Lethbridge has passed their goal of $15,000 and currently sits at more than $20,000 raised so far. Donations are still being accepted until March the 2nd. Well, we experienced quite a bit of snow over the weekend. Now, while the frozen moisture is very much welcome and needed in our region, it is also quite unpleasant for southern Alberta motorists. The city of Lethbridge activated their snow routes on Sunday. Vehicle owners were given until 1 p.m. Monday to remove their vehicles off the streets marked as a snow route, or they could face fines if they impede snow clearing operations. The city says these measures will remain in effect until they announce that snow routes are no longer active. Students at Agnes Davidson Elementary School were treated to an extra long weekend. On Saturday, crews were called to tend to a water main break on 20th Street South in front of the school, forcing it to remain closed. As of Monday afternoon, the work is still ongoing and water services are expected to be restored sometime on Tuesday. You know, everyone has their favorite cure-all that they swear by when it comes to fighting viruses. Dr. Clayton Cogano, naturopathic doctor and owner of Well Vitality Health Clinic here in Lethbridge, shares about one common ingredient that is probably in your kitchen right now. And it is a great natural cure to fight common illnesses.
For example, like garlic. It's the active component of the garlic. It's called allicin, and that just specifically will inhibit replication of a virus and even deactivate enzymes which allow it to work properly. So there's quite a bit of research on different supplements that can not only stop a virus, but also slow things down so then your immune system can actually catch up and defeat the virus.
Make sure you watch for more health tips with Dr. Clayton Cogano as he chats with BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up after Business News. Doctors in Saskatchewan have a new 4-year deal with the province. 93% of physicians who cast ballots have voted in favor of the new contract. It includes an overall average general rate increase of 2.5% over 4 years. It also hikes funding for parental leave and continuing education. King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. Buckingham Palace says it's during the King's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement. More tests reveal that the 75-year-old has a form of cancer. Officials would not specify what kind of cancer and what stage the cancer was at. Buckingham Palace also said that Charles did not have prostate cancer. Charles says he's very grateful for the swift intervention of his medical team and expert care. A palace spokesperson said no further details are being released about his prognosis or treatment. The King did return to London, however, to begin outpatient treatment. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre outlined his party's plans to address the rise in car thefts by increasing the mandatory prison time for those who commit multiple auto theft crimes. The announcement comes ahead of this week's National Summit on Auto Theft, which is taking place in our nation's capital.
After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, car thefts are up 300% in Toronto, 100% in Ottawa and Montreal. It wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau, as he admitted in a press release last week. Since his government was elected in 2015, there's been a 34% nationwide increase in car theft. In New Brunswick, car thefts have spiked 120%, while Ontario and Quebec have seen rises of 122 and 59% respectively. The explosion of car theft is making life even more unaffordable for Canadians as insurance companies drive up their premiums in order to compensate for the cost of replacing the stolen cars.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken returned to the Middle East on Monday for his 5th urgent diplomatic mission since Israel's war with Hamas that began last October. Blinken arrived in Saudi Arabia with planned stops in Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the West Bank. This comes on the heels of U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson's announcement that he would be introducing a standalone bill that would offer $17.6 billion in military aid to Israel and its fight with Hamas. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates announced more funding for UNRWA, the UN Aid Palestinian group, to support Palestinian refugees in Gaza. There are reports that both the United States and UK militaries have hit Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen. According to our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, the targets appear to be missile systems, launchers, and air defense systems of the terrorist group, which has been targeting international shipping in the Red Sea. She says it all circles back to Iran.
We've been talking about this for a while. For the last decade or more, Iran's regime has fixated itself on building its assets and its proxies outside its borders in the region to flex its muscles, to line them up. And now we see it's showtime, right? So you're watching Hezbollah in Lebanon. You're watching Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and Gaza. You're watching, of course, the Houthis in Yemen, insurgencies in Syria and Iraq. They're all lined up and ready to attack U.S. assets. And we have withdrawn from there. So we're not as invested in terms of manpower. And of course, the rhetoric coming from the White House has not been anything but harsh against the Iran's regime.
Lisa will also have the latest on the U.S. military aid to Israel coming up in the second half of our program. Well, we had lots of snow over the weekend, but fortunately some of it has already started melting here in southwestern Alberta. More of the weather details for our region are coming up shortly. You know, last week we set a record high thanks to all of the warm temperatures. We hit about 16 degrees. And this past weekend, lots of snow. Welcome to Lethbridge. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, no record high temps this week, but it should be a little more seasonal.
Yes, in fact, right exactly in that seasonal range. Now, anything from 0 to -12 is seasonal right now. So as we're looking over the next week, that's basically what we're seeing up until we get to Super Bowl Sunday there. We'll get back into the pluses for +4, but we're looking at a 0 Tuesday, -3 for Wednesday, -4 on Thursday, -5 on Friday. We're seeing a trend there, and then we're popping back up to -1 on Saturday. And then, of course, there's that plus on Sunday. 4 degrees. And the average high for this time of year, like I was saying before, is 0, average low -12. 18 was our high temperature on this day back in 1984. And in 1975, we had the chilliest, which was -34. 7:58, that is when the sun rose this morning. Sunset this evening at 5:33. We're looking at 9 hours, 35 minutes of daylight. Okay, fairly sunny actually on the west coast tomorrow. High of 7 in Vancouver, high of 8 degrees in Victoria, -6 for a high in Edmonton. Tomorrow we're looking at mix of sun and cloud, mainly cloudy skies and a 30% chance of flurries tomorrow in Calgary with a high of -5 there as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we're seeing mainly cloudy conditions. -2 for a high in Saskatoon, Regina sitting at 0 and 4 degrees for a high in Winnipeg with mainly cloudy skies, looking at fog dissipating in the morning. Also in Saskatchewan, looking at those wind chill factors in the -teens. Particularly in the morning. Mix of sun and cloud tomorrow expected in Toronto, high of 2 degrees, -2 for a high in Ottawa, and -3 expected tomorrow in Montreal with clear skies in both of those cities. Okay, so the Maritimes got quite a bit of snow over the weekend, particularly right through last night and even into today and this morning. But looking at ahead to tomorrow, Fredericton seeing a mix of sun and cloud, 0 for a high. Halifax sitting at 2 degrees. Charlottetown sitting at 0 tomorrow, looking at periods of light snow and then 30% chance of snow by the afternoon there. St. John's looking at a mix of rain and snow. We're seeing 5 to 10 centimeters of snow, 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, so quite a bit of precipitation happening up there, and 1 for a high. Also up to 80 winds. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The head of Air Canada appeared before a House of Commons committee on Monday following many reports of passenger mistreatment at Canada's largest airline. In fact, in one case, a man with cerebral palsy was forced to allegedly drag himself off of a plane when airline staff refused to help him. Michael Rousseau apologized in November for the airline shortfalls and said new measures would be coming to improve the travel experience for thousands who live with a disability. Last week, the carrier formed an advisory committee made up of customers with disabilities and laid out a program where a lanyard worn by passengers indicates to staff that they may need assistance. Manulife Financial says it is taking action following backlash to an exclusive deal it signed with Loblaws. The insurance company says patients who need select specialty drugs will be able to fill their prescriptions at any pharmacy now. Under a deal signed last week, Manulife customers who take around 260 specialty medications would only have been able to fill their prescriptions at Shoppers Drug Mart or other Loblaw-owned pharmacies. Preferred pharmacy network arrangements are common in the United States, but Manulife faced pushback from those who were worried about specialty drugs could become less accessible to those in rural and remote regions. The man who's been called a godfather of artificial intelligence wants Ottawa to take urgent action to regulate the technology. Yoshua Bengio says the need for legislation is urgent because AI's current path poses major societal risks, even if that legislation is not perfect. He warns superhuman intelligence that is as smart as a human being could be developed within the next 20 years or even sooner. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 213 points on the day to finish at 20,871. The Dow was down 274 points to 38,380. The S&P 500 was down 15 on the day to 4942, and the Nasdaq was down 31 points to finish at 15,597. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 50 cents to 72.78 US per barrel. Natural gas was even at 208 US. Gold was down $14.65 to $2,025.11 US an ounce, and silver was down 34 cents to $22.35 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.63 per bushel, barley is at $6.23, canola is at $13.11, and corn is at $7.60 per bushel. Live cattle were down 83 cents to $179.73. Feeder cattle March contract was down $2.05 to $242.75. Lean hogs were down $1.05 to $74.40, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.87 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, 5 players from Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team are officially facing sexual assault charges in London, Ontario, and 4 of them are now NHL players. They include Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers, and Cal Foote and Michael McLeod with the New Jersey organization. The 5th is a former NHL player, Alex Fermenton, who is now with the team in Europe. The United States has introduced a standalone bill that would offer $17.6 billion in military assistance to Israel in its fight with Hamas in Gaza. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more details for us in just a few moments. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. On Saturday, February 24th, Streets Alive Mission is hosting their Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser. Last year, the city came together and raised over $66,000 in support of the life-changing work of Streets Alive Mission. This family-friendly walk is to raise money to help those who are experiencing hurt, hunger, and homelessness. To register, donate, and to find out more information, visit cnoy.org/Lethbridge. Discover more about the Blackfoot culture as they celebrate their annual International Peace Powwow and Festival taking place February 24th and 25th at the NMAC Center in Lethbridge, with doors opening at 10 a.m. Experience the spectacular grand entry, Indigenous music and dance. Plus, discover unique items at the craft fair and enjoy some fry bread at the concession. Tickets available now at the NMAC Center. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
The U.S. and U.K. militaries have struck deeply hardened targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen over the weekend. It was in response to the terrorist group's constant attacks on international shipping and naval vessels in the Red Sea. Now, to talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, it appears as though Houthi storage facilities were targeted along with missile systems, launchers, and air defense systems.
Yes. So the question is now, how will this deterrence work against not just the Houthis, but sending the message back home to Iran's regime that continues to puppeteer its proxies against elements in the West and, of course, Israel. We've been talking about this for a while. For the last decade or more, Iran's regime has fixated itself on building its assets and its proxies outside its borders in the region to flex its muscles, to line them up. And now we see it's showtime, right? So you're watching Hezbollah in Lebanon, you're watching Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and Gaza, you're watching, of course, the Houthis in Yemen, insurgencies in Syria and Iraq. They're all lined up and ready to attack U.S. assets, and we have withdrawn from there. So we're not as invested in terms of manpower. And of course, the rhetoric coming from the White House has not been anything but harsh against the Iran's regime. So Tehran's hearing a very different tune for the last 3 years, of course, and now we are trying to show them some deterrence, say, this is not going to be okay against the United States, but that Yemen policy, that Houthi policy has to be much more across the board in terms of sanctions, in terms of partnering with the the benign elements inside Yemen to fight the terrorist elements of the Iran regime, to truly crack down on what Iran's regime has done throughout the region. And I just don't think the White House has prepared such a plan of deterrence.
Lisa, there are reports coming in that American bases once again were attacked by unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles just hours after retaliatory strikes by the U.S. against Iranian-backed militias in both Syria and Iraq.
Right, we're playing whack-a-mole once again. So, responding to these, what the White House deems as these one-offs, right? So, trying to keep up with the attacks coming from the proxies, Iran's proxies in the Middle East, but at the same time, trying not to escalate things. Look, we are 1 year out from having a new president, perhaps here in the United States, or re-electing Joe Biden, it seems. So, of course, foreign policy very important right now. Getting involved in another war, very questionable right now. So what the White House is trying to do, of course, is trying to distance itself from this. Perhaps they'd want to get involved in a war closer to election time and try to hold off a bit till we get a bit closer, or try to figure out what's going on in Ukraine first so that we're not spread so thin all throughout the world. It's difficult, but what I can say is deterrence begins at the White House, not on the battlefield. I don't think these one-off responses, although they're very important, are sending a clear message to Tehran, and that's really the question. Is the deterrence working? Are we flexing enough for that Iran's regime to actually back down and not double down as we have seen in recent months?
Closer to home, we've seen the many trucks which participated in the convoy in Texas, Lisa, as many have been protesting the amount of illegal border crossings. Well, sources from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency say they're also seeing a high trend of crossings, illegal crossings, and where you are in California and Arizona as well.
Right, so they're moving over. What does this tell us? What Texas has taken on by itself. So as we know, the state of Texas is actually in a fight with the White House. They've gone to court over this. The Biden White House does not want Texas to crack down on immigration the way that it has. They basically have taken the Donald Trump plan as a state, right? And they are trying to stop this incredible, the sheer numbers of immigrants coming over daily. The fact that we now have numbers from the last couple of months, that the numbers are increasing in Arizona and California and decreasing in Texas, tells us one thing: it's working. Whatever Texas is doing to try to keep the migrants out is working, which tells us there is a way to slow this wave of migrants coming into the country. Look, there's an increase in crime. We cannot vet them. There's an increase in numbers of migrants coming over that are on the FBI's most wanted list. Let's talk about those bad actors that are not on the FBI's most wanted list and should be, right? There's no way to vet them. The disease, just accountability of these numbers, even the fact that they would be, individuals who want to come over here for the American dream and opportunity. The cities cannot absorb them. And we're watching Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, overflowing, not able to absorb these numbers, and they end up on the streets or end up getting involved in crime or getting raped or getting involved in things that they did not come to the United States for. So the fact that we're seeing it works, I think it should be a copycat model for many other states on the border. It should be a message to the White House that this is the way to do it. If we actually want to give these migrants a chance, this is the way to do it.
How much of an election issue will this be for Joe Biden?
So many people believe that this will be the #1 election issue. If you look at illegal immigration as an economic issue, it's a safety issue, it's a national security issue. Across the board, it's a fentanyl issue, right? A lot of suburban families are having issues with the illegal drug flow into the country. It really covers a lot of the issues that the average American faces on a daily basis right now, and the deterioration of the nation. Right now, we're talking about some of these migrants getting debit cards. I mean, that's taxpayer money. So when people are struggling to pay, $8 for milk and $7 for a carton of eggs, they start to question why people who just illegally came into the country are now getting debit cards from their taxpayer money. So there will be a lot of questions, and I think this will be a bipartisan issue. I think Americans are understanding, even in blue cities, the bluest of the blue, that once really we're proud of the fact that they're sanctuary cities, realize that, sanctuary is a wonderful concept in its ideology, but in practice is not something that we can do, particularly with the number of migrants that are coming over. And it's going to cost Americans. It's going to cost them their lives in terms of safety. It's going to cost them money in terms of just the, what we have to do to just help them resettle and such. So I think that it will become a very major issue, and lawmakers on both sides have to come up with something substantial to present.
As a number of countries have suspended funding to UNRWA, the UN Palestinian aid agency, in light of the allegations that 12 of its members participated in the October 7th attacks against Israel, comes word that the United Arab Emirates allocated $5 million in support of UNRWA in Gaza, Lisa. The country said the money will be dedicated solely to helping Palestinian refugees. But the question remains, how much will actually make its way into the hands of Hamas?
Right. And, in light of the new information, and it's not new, I will get into that. I've actually been covering this for over 10 years as to what UNRWA has been doing with the aid money that it gets. A lot of that aid money coming from the United States, and of course other Western countries, Europe, Canada, I'm sure, are all upset about the new footage of, these, not just the UNRWA, the 12, there's much more involvement, meaning footage of weapons being held in UNRWA schools, being hidden there, making it very difficult for the Israelis to find Hamas assets and things because they're so deeply hidden. And who's helping that? That's aiding a terrorist entity. Obviously, Hamas being in power in Gaza makes this very, very difficult. But we have known this for years, that UNRWA has not taken accountability for the indoctrination, for again, using schools, using hospitals, not really being a partner with the West, even though it's getting this money. And now, of course, finding out the cherry on top that they have been involved in the Hamas attack of October 7th, set the Europeans, the Australians, the Americans off, and they withdrew their aid money for now. This was halted. If you remember, it was also halted under Donald Trump, who said, I know that this money is going towards terrorism. So again, this is not a new thing. The Americans have known about UNRWA not being such a legitimate aid organization to help Palestinians for just aid. Now we get to the United Arab Emirates are very worried about the fact that, well, this is also the aid organization that could provide aid, right? Potentially provide aid. So they want to continue their aid money. AOC is another partner in this. She thinks that the money to the UNRWA should be reinstated right away. So, before we have any sort of guarantee that this money is not going into terrorist hands, that they're not going to be complicit in these terrorist crimes, there's no reason for the West to be involved in all of this. Now, what makes this tricky is the United Arab Emirates is also a co-signer of the Abraham Accords. So meaning they have normalized relations with Israel. Obviously, it behooves everyone here to have peace in the region. So for them to turn around and give money to an organization that is aiding terrorists is not a good look. But, we're still hopeful that once the dust settles, a lot of Arab nations will go back to wanting peace between obviously both sides, but more so aligning themselves with Israel as a way forward to actually have regional stability and prosperity, to have economic trade and other opportunities between the nations.
U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson announced over the weekend that he would be introducing a standalone bill that would offer aid to Israel amid the war in Gaza. Now, according to NBC News, it would offer $17.6 billion in military aid to Israel, Lisa.
Yeah, as we know, there are players inside both the Senate and Congress, more so Congress, that those are the visible players that are very much against giving money to Israel. So they will probably stand against it. But the reason why he is introducing a standalone bill is because the Democrats have wanted to couple together any aid for Israel because they know that that's an important issue for most, I should say. But it's a bipartisan issue, but very much important for the Republicans. They want to couple that with Ukraine funding as well. And now there has been sort of a enough is enough kind of sentiments across the board with giving more money to Ukraine, but we will see what shall happen. I think a lot of lawmakers say enough is enough. Obviously, the issue with Israel, they're an ally. This is very immediate. They're fighting the fight for all of us. If Hamas grows, if Iran's regime grows, they're basically doing the dirty work for the West. And because of that, they see that as a priority, and in having a standalone bill just for Israel and not having to, pork barrel this all together with other issues.
Let's talk about anti-Semitism for just a moment here. I mean, it's around campuses around North America. We're seeing it in so many other areas around the world. It continues to rear its ugly head, Lisa, and it appears to be doing so in the workplace as well. According to the New York Post, a survey from late 2022 said that 26% of recruiters said they were less likely to move forward with a Jewish candidate, and around 17% of hiring managers went as far as to admit their company's management told them not to hire any Jews.
Yeah. How did we get here, right? How the year 2024, we should even say, don't hire XYZ or hire XYZ. What happened to merit? What happened to experience? What happened to people who are just diverse in their, in their thoughts and bring something to the table? This is very, very unfortunate. Now, the reason for this, I just want to get into what the very, very incorrect premise of all of this is. When DEI is supposed to protect minorities or protect a certain group, they view Jews as the privileged white, and therefore do not protect them or do not offer any protection or any defense because of that. And now that is so incredibly incorrect. As you and I both know, Jews come in all colors and varieties and ethnic backgrounds. And even in Israel, there's over 50% are of Sephardic background, which means they are either of African or Middle Eastern descent and are very dark in skin color. The fact that we even have to talk about this is asinine, right? Someone's skin color should actually be a reason for them to be hired or not hired in this case. This also has roots in the, Occupy Wall Street, kind of the Jews control the world kind of, horrific conspiracy theories where they want to stop, again, the privileged white from progressing further and not hire them. I have actually heard from someone who lives here in Los Angeles that he as a Jewish white man had a very, very difficult time finding work. He was out of work for over a year and a half. Very specifically, his skill set very specific, his education very specific, and he had a very difficult time finding work. And he also attributed it to this kind of incorrect ideology and premise of not hiring Jewish candidates. So very, very unfortunate. How I really hope the world, if this is a pendulum, I hope that we're at one extreme and we bounce back somewhere to the middle where we look at people for who they are, what they offer, their values and their skill sets, their experience, their thoughts, and all of that, and none of this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay away from the discrimination and racism. Lisa, the U.S. Defense Department's latest China military power report was released. It focused on China's buildup and modernization program. The report also talks about how the Chinese Navy continued to beef up what is already the world's largest fleet.
Yeah, isn't this crazy? Look, we have had so many reports in the last year talk about different parts of China's military might and have a report based out of the United States saying, oops, we didn't realize how advanced they are getting. They are perhaps more advanced than we are. And again, this is a scary thought to think that the United States is sleeping on any of this, to have a report that actually openly says that we are not as advanced as the Chinese are. They're obviously listening. They obviously know what they're doing. The Chinese are masterful at copycat technology, beating out their opponents, figuring out what their opponents are doing, and then surpassing them. We're talking about cyber capabilities, we're talking about military capabilities, and in this case, naval capabilities. I think it's a big wake-up call to the West as to what the Chinese is doing, and the biggest question being, what is their agenda?
American correspondent and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.
Well, what a crazy year it's been for colds, flus, and COVID, and you name it. But there is a way to build your immunity to protect yourself and your family from getting run down by sickness. Our guest today is Dr. Clayton Coganow, who is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge and the owner of Well Vitality Health Clinic. He's also trained in conventional medicine with a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science Kinesiology and did 3 years of research on radiation and cancer at the University of Lethbridge. It's great to see you again, Dr. Coganow.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. So it seems almost everyone you talk to these days in Southern Alberta has had more than their fair share of colds and flu this season, myself included in there, unfortunately. So naturally, people are looking for ways to build up their immune system to stay healthy, right? So how has it been for you at your clinic? Have you seen an increase in people struggling with health issues? What have you seen?
Well, I wouldn't say I see an increase. It definitely always increases around this time of year. It's pretty normal, maybe a little bit more influenza, a little bit more respiratory issues than the past few years. But I also feel like our bodies are just kind of building our immune system back up from kind of being away from everything the last couple years. So it does take a little bit of time to sort of reactivate things and get your immune system used to these things again. And so it's kind of to be expected.
Okay, yeah, interesting. It's interesting that, how we were almost like on a pause there for a while, and now we're getting back into it, and here we are. So, there's a lot of talk that vitamin D is a good immunity builder. I mean, I've always heard about vitamin C, but tell us a bit about vitamin D.
So vitamin D is quite it has many complex functions in the body. One of them is the immune system. And so its primary thing there is that it's activating cells in your body, immune cells in your body, called T cells. And they're the cells that will recognize a virus or a bacteria. So when something comes into your body, it's those T cells that say, hey, there's something wrong. That sounds the alarm system. And it also activates another cell called a macrophage. And this cell particularly is a type of cell that will go and gobble up the virus or the bacteria and eat it and get rid of it in your body. So that's primarily its kind of role in the immune system, is it's upregulating those immune cells. I mean, it also has a direct antimicrobial effect, so it decreases the ability for these things to replicate, et cetera, and it's an anti-inflammatory. So vitamin D is really, it's a very popular one. It's quite safe, when taken roughly within, the recommended dose. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it also plays a significant role in calcium absorption. So you don't want to take too much of it because it can actually create a situation where you can have too much calcium going into your body. And it also breaks bone apart to allow formation of stronger bones in a roundabout way. And so it has many roles in the immune system, but it's also something that you don't want to just take copious amounts of, because it has multiple other functions in the body as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I've usually attributed it to like a sunshine. Like if you don't get enough sunshine, vitamin D is a perfect one to take for that. But it's interesting to know that it does so many other things as well.
Yeah. And most people in Canada are quite deficient in it. And we can test vitamin D. I think it's important to test vitamin D and kind of monitor it to make sure that you aren't taking too much as well. A lot of people are just told a lot of times that, well, you're probably deficient because you're in Canada, and it's true. Most of us are. But once you start taking it, then you also want to make sure you're not taking too much of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it's true then that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I know, yeah. For the most part, absolutely. Like there's a lot of things we can do to prevent. Sometimes you just get unlucky. I think, but I do think that there's a lot of things that you can do to help boost your immune system to prevent getting ill in the first place. Absolutely, there is.
Okay. Well, with that said, what are some other supplements that are known to help build immunity?
I mean, there's the ones that a lot of people have heard about, like echinacea, for example, and vitamin C. Those things are great at boosting immune system. Some others that maybe people haven't heard of that are more directly antiviral in nature would be like N-acetylcysteine. Quercetin is another one that actually doubles up as a great natural antihistamine for allergies as well. And then there's also another one that's fantastic is astragalus. It improves your white blood cell count. So it increases your defense, so to speak, against the viruses or bacteria that are in your body. There's so many that you can, try or list off. You don't want to get overwhelmed with taking too many things either.
Yeah, definitely. It can get a little bit, a little bit much sometimes.
A little overwhelming.
Exactly. And then, of course, we've got some colds that are caused by bacteria, and then others are caused by a virus. So I understand that maybe there's some herbs that are antiviral in nature. So
Yes.
Can you maybe explain how those work?
Yeah, so like certain herbs, like for example, like garlic. It's the active component of the garlic. It's called allicin, and that like just specifically will inhibit replication of a virus and even deactivate enzymes which allow it to work properly. So there's quite a bit of research on different supplements that can not only stop a virus, but also slow things down so then your immune system can actually catch up and defeat the virus.
Wow, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how much of a role does stress or anxiety play when it comes to immunity?
It's probably one of the biggest things that I see in my practice is chronic stress and anxiety, which very much go hand in hand a lot of times, specifically to certain hormones that get depleted with these things, cortisol being one of the main ones. And this hormone in your body lowers in response to chronic stress. And initially, your body will be able to handle that. But when your body doesn't have these specific hormones, then you're much more susceptible to getting viruses or bacterial infections, specifically when the cortisol drops. Initially, when your stress is high, your cortisol rises, it goes up. And that actually can improve your immune system, improve your defense against viruses. So chronic stress, chronic depletion of this hormone cortisol will lead to a lowering of your immune system and an inability to handle or deal with stress, which can lead to anxiety.
Oh, terrible.
And so supporting that system is a massively essential thing at helping to prevent viruses and boosting your immune system.
Yeah, so how can we support that then? What are some things that we can do to reduce that stress?
Well, it's difficult. Everybody's different. There's the obvious sort of answer is like, well, do things like exercise and yoga and meditation, etc. I try and tell my patients just to try and look at what's on their plate and take something off their plate if they can, because a lot of times it's life gets very busy and it's very difficult to just say, oh, go do this or go do that. Like you're putting something more on by doing that. So some people can do that and other people they can't. And so I think for people to kind of learn that like it's okay to review what you have on your plate and say no and be able to take things off your plate is a fantastic way to reduce your stress, manage the anxiety as well as doing things that help like exercise and yoga, meditation, etc. Those things.
Right, definitely. What about a proper rest? I've heard that could make a huge difference as well.
It goes hand in hand with stress, and rest. If you're resting more, sleep, for example, is a massive one that plays such an important role because it's such a massive stressor on your cortisol system that if you're not taking things off your plate, if you're not decreasing how much load you have on your body, then it's going to be very difficult to maintain a healthy immune system.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when we're so stressed and anxiety ridden, it is hard to get proper rest. It's hard to sleep.
They're directly related. You actually need energy and energy systems to fall asleep. So it's this, for a lot of people, when they have insomnia or difficulty sleeping, they also have massive issues with their cortisol and their hormones and their energy and their immune system. And the only way to truly fix the sleep is by helping their energy systems, helping their immune system. And there are things directly, that can help benefit sleep, but you almost have to treat it from a dualistic manner. You have to treat both their energy systems to give them more energy in order to then fall asleep.
Yeah, I know. It's a complicated system. Do you recommend melatonin? I mean, I've heard some people say don't get dependent on it.
Yeah,
but-
so I mean, melatonin, I find that melatonin, most patients that come into me have already tried melatonin because it's more well known, and so melatonin is just a hormone, secreted at sleep by a gland in your brain called the pineal gland. And this is something that is more important for the circadian rhythm. So it's more important if you have like jet lag. And in those cases, it works amazingly well for most people. But what I find is that when people come in and most people, even if they haven't tried it, it's rarely the one that's really indicated. I find there's a lot of other sleep support supplements that we can try and even combine together that will help people with sleep more than melatonin.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to your physician, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pretty complex system. And unfortunately, it's one that we can't test.
That's too bad. Thinking of maybe what we're putting into our bodies here, are there certain types of foods that can help build our immune system? I mean, we've always heard that there is. And on the flip side, what would be the foods that would weaken immune system?
So the ones, I mean, yes, absolutely. There's, foods that are going to support the immune system. Anything with lots of color, fruits and vegetables with lots of color, berries full of antioxidants. They take pressure off of your system, off your body. Citrus fruits tend to be quite high in vitamin C, which boosts your immune system. So like oranges and kiwis, etc., things like that. And then there's foods that produce a lot of stress on the body. So like, for example, alcohol, it puts a ton of stress on the liver. It decreases your ability to process and assimilate nutrients. Foods that are high in sugar are very inflammatory, so they put a lot of pressure on your body that way. Foods that are high in saturated or trans fats are also very difficult for your body to process, and they create a lot of oxidation. And so what your goal is with food is to take pressure off of your system, not to put more pressure on your system. And again, it comes down to stress. Stress isn't always, mental, emotional. Sometimes it can be physical as well. And in the case of food, that's exactly what it is. So, from my practice, I tend to also look at a lot of digestive tract stuff, gut health stuff, because what your goal is to try and take as much load off the body, as much stress off of the body in general, because it will all help.
So many things to think about when we're putting our bodies under stress here. There's so many factors that go into it. Now, I know that your clinic offers something fairly unique, this IV therapy to boost immunity. Can you maybe quickly explain how this works?
Sure. So there's different, so intravenous therapies. There's different ones that you can do. I would say the most common for boosting the immune system would be like an IV nutrient bag. So that would have like a higher dose vitamin C that you could take, then you could take orally, and then B vitamins, magnesium, calcium, basically a multivitamin in there. Now, the benefit of the IV, because all these IVs, and people will tell you like, well, they're water soluble, you'll just pee them out. And that's very true. They are water soluble, and absolutely you do that. But it's actually the difference between taking a supplement by mouth orally is that when you take it by mouth, it has to go through your digestive tract, which most people that I see have horrible digestive systems that we have to work on. So you lose absorbability there. So you're not absorbing everything. And then it goes into your bloodstream to your liver first. And then your liver will actually remove a lot of the vitamin that you took orally before it goes to all the cells of your body.
Fascinating.
So by the time you take a supplement orally, you're reducing your dosage, you're reducing the amount. Or in the case of, for example, vitamin C, you're unable to take a massive dose because you'll get irritable bowel from taking a high dose of vitamin C. So intravenous therapy is beneficial because it bypasses both of those systems. When you IV someone high dose vitamin C, it doesn't go through the digestive tract. We can give you a much higher dose, and you absorb 100% of everything we give you. So every single cell of your body gets all of the vitamins and all of the minerals that you wouldn't have got just by taking an oral supplement. So what it does is it ramps up all those metabolic and cellular processes. And then your body says, okay, now we'll get rid of the rest. So it is true that you do eventually get rid of it, but it's how it's working in your body that's so massively stronger than just taking an oral supplement. So it is very beneficial.
That is really fascinating. I bet people just come out of there feeling like $1 million.
It's one of the best things we can do for our immune system and energy systems. Yeah.
So interesting. It's been so interesting as always talking to you, but we are out of time. So I thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Clayton Cogonut is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge with Well Vitality Health Clinic. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.